Okay. Clap one on three. 1, 2, 3. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash, and as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the mostess, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. How are you feeling?
I feel jagged.
Okay. Okay.
No, I'm good. I'm fine. I just you know what it is in the real immediate is I have discovered some rogue bruises. Does this ever happen to you? You
Always.
find bruises and you're like, where did that come from?
Yep.
I'm going to try and show you on the camera. It's on my knee, but I am wearing a nightshirt, so maybe you can see
So
it.
watch your crotch.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Right?
Oh, that's not good.
No idea where it came from. No idea.
Yeah.
And it's big. For the listeners who aren't viewing, I'm talking this thing is like 4 to 5 centimeters in diameter.
Bless
2.5-ish inches.
Bless you for that way. I was genuinely going to go, oh, that's like 2 loonies wide minimum. Loonies. Nobody measures
like
things
that
in coins.
until now. And what I like is that that's so Canadian. Not only is it not using the metric system, but it's using our currency. Oh,
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. It feels, and there's one on the other knee that isn't as bad, but I'm like, what have I done in my sleep? Like, what am I doing?
Oh, I find mine are usually on my forearms. And I've learned it's because I quite often, I guess I'm a spirited walker. And so when I'm walking down the hall, I don't feel like I'm doing it, but apparently I'm swinging my arms like I'm in a musical or something. And I bang my arm into doorknobs going down the hallway.
You know what's amazing about this?
Yeah.
Burned in my memory is a photograph I have of you that I have no way of accessing. I'm assuming it's in Toronto, where I am not right now. But I was waiting. Why are these the memories that we've talked about this on the show before. Why are these the things that stick with you? Anyway, I was waiting for you to come into your bedroom. This was in Regina when we were teens.
Sure.
And the picture is you coming through the door and kind of like starting to laugh as I've snapped your photo. But I will say one of the things that burned into my memory is a real swung arm. Like, so I wish I had this photographic proof, but it's just so funny that you say that because I don't think I would have ever noticed or clocked that about you in life, but this photograph definitely captured that behavior.
Oh, it's all the time. All the time. Like sometimes I misjudge doorways and I'll like bang my upper arm into it, but it's constant on the forearms, any sort of doorknob, especially we have a closet near our kitchen. And I crack my arm on there sometimes. And at one point, my youngest, oh God, he was probably 6, something like that at the time. He went barreling down the hallway because that kid does not know how to walk anywhere. And he clipped that doorknob with his head and got a gash in his eyebrow. And it just so much blood started coming out. And it was like 10:30 at night. And I don't know why he was up. I can't remember the circumstances, but it was just like oh my God, got him cleaned up. And it was like, oh, okay, well, the bleeding stopped and we just sent him to bed. Not my finest parenting move, but I was like, he's okay. He's okay to this day. He does have a small scar because of it. And then like 6 months later, he got bit by a dog on the hand. Right. It wasn't bad, but for the sake of these kind of precautions, took him to the hospital for it. And while at the hospital, the doctor looked at him, noticed the little scar in his eyebrow, and went, "Ooh, what happened there?" And I said, and I know like this, it sounds so fake.
Yeah.
And I said, we have this doorknob on a closet down our hallway, and he went running past it and clipped his head on it. And she went, oh, did we put stitches or glue it up when you brought him in? Not, did you bring him in? How did that surgeon handle it when you did bring him in? And that was the moment I was like, I knew in that split second, if she wanted to check, she could check the file and see he was not brought in. And I've never felt worse as a parent in that moment. I didn't even feel worse when he actually officially got hurt, because he was perfectly fine. I went to bed and whatever. But yeah, in that moment, I shrunk to the size of a mouse and just went, oh, yeah. I mean, in the moment, it didn't seem so bad. So we actually didn't bring him in because it was late. And what I didn't say was, and I didn't want to bother anybody. And I'm like, no, and it was okay. We just kind of handled it at home. And she was like, okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That was the moment of just
Wow.
like, okay. And then
I
I
think
had
she
to,
should also play it a little cooler on her like detective
yes.
work. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
maybe like,
yes.
how did it oh oh, how did this happen? Oh, he clipped it on the thing, whatever. Oh, how did it feel? Did you feel it was big enough to bring him in, or did it seem like something you could handle at home? Then make your judgmental notes in private and go and talk to
Correct.
your conspirators. And by that, I mean the other doctors.
Yep.
And the hospital staff, and then
Yeah.
do your thing. Don't corner someone like that. It's also not gonna
No.
help you if you make so
No.
like, let's say you were negligent, which you absolutely weren't. That line of questioning isn't gonna help her.
Yeah. Correct. Oh, I have never felt worse. That was the moment I was like, I should have brought him in. I should have brought him in. I mean, in the end, he was fine. Everything was fine. And if he had seemed like drowsy, or if it seemed like something was off, like I would have taken him in, but the bleeding had stopped. He said it was fine. And so of course I
Bump
carried his,
themselves and cut
oh,
themselves. It's not,
always,
and you should have also just said
always.
he's the third. Like it's like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Well,
Like
and
it's
the
like,
joke is I kept sitting there thinking, please, please don't look up my name, because this was the third time I had brought Mike, because that was the 6-month span where I had all three of them in the ER by no fault of my own. I was not present at any of those instances. One got tackled in a weird way during football and he got an ankle injury. Then like 4 months late, 5 months later, I think the middle one slipped on a patch of ice at school, banged his head and cracked his eyebrow open. And I picked him up and they were using his toque to hold the blood into his head, essentially in that
God,
moment.
so Canadian.
Um, yeah, right. So I wasn't at school at that. I was at the game, football game, but I was in the stands, so it wasn't me tackling. And then this one, a month later, I don't even know if it was a full month, but a month later, they were coming home from school, and the neighbor's dog came out and thought my son is kind of frightened of dogs, and he started to run. The dog thought he was playing, and the dog just kind of playfully nipped, but ended up poking through with one of the teeth. And thank God we knew the dog, because then I had to I had to contact the neighbor to find out about the dog's vaccinations, because if the dog's not vaccinated, it would have required my son getting 3 sets of needles. Whereas if the dog is up to date, my son wouldn't have needed any.
Right.
And so it was like, he's good to go. And so thankfully they checked everything. And then they had to call me the next day about the dog. And I repeatedly was like, the dog is very nice. We like the dog. The dog is friendly. This was not provoked. This was not a big attack. I was so terrified they were going to take that dog from those people. They did not. The
Yeah.
dog is fine.
I
And my
got bit in the
child is
face
fine.
by a dog as a child, and I don't know what
Mm.
happened to that dog. But I think the dog lived.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Were there
It would
phone
it
calls about the dog? Because I had
we
multiple, like I had doctors and like health officials calling me specifically to
well,
ask,
we
like to follow up about the dog.
We'd have to ask Mother Laurel about that, but what they did do is, I think I've told this story on the podcast before, is they sent a police officer to my home to lecture me about not petting strange dogs. Now, in my defense, as a child, I saw this dog every day on my way to and from school. We passed this dog every time.
Sure.
It was, again, it was an accident. I made my talking Alf doll talk. It scared the dog, who barked, and it was just very close to me, and so when it barked and bit down, it got my face. So again, it wasn't like it was an attack, it didn't chase me, it wasn't,
Sure.
it was, I'd label it as misadventure. So yeah, I don't think we had any, like, I mean, Mother Laurel may listen to this. She listens to every episode of the show. And then I'll just get a text that'll say, we had the dog destroyed. I don't know. I don't know. It was the 80s. I don't know. Like, again, it was the wild, wild west
Sure.
back then. Either
It was.
nothing was done or everything was done. Right. So I mean, I pray that the dog was not. I pray that the
Of
dog
course.
was okay.
Oh, I guarantee if it was 1984 and I took my son into the ER and they were like, "How'd you get that scar?" And he was like, "Oh, I ran into a closet door." I guarantee that person would have gone, "Cool. Chicks dig scars." And that would
Yeah.
have been it.
And
There
just to
would have been
clarify,
no comment.
my dog bite didn't happen in 1984. Like, I'm not that old, like this was the late 80s, maybe even been the
Sure.
90s.
I was just choosing a specific year for random sake.
Of course.
But
Of
yeah,
course.
but yeah,
I just want to, I every year counts at this point.
of course, of course.
Now, I also just want to step back for a quick second
Yeah.
and say that one of my favorite things that you said when recounting this story was, you were like, I wasn't present for any of these. I wasn't present for the dog thing. I mean, I was at the game, but I was in the stands. I wasn't doing the tackling. And not in my wildest dreams did I ever think that that would come out of your mouth, or that anyone listening would have been like, ooh, yeah, Christy and her roughhousing with her children. Like, you just you don't come off as the
Yeah.
type, I guess is the point.
Sure, sure. I guess, I mean, psychologist hat on myself. Um, I feel so incredibly guilty about these, but I want to make sure the people know that these were not my fault and I am a good parent.
I guarantee you everyone who listens to this show
I feel like
believes
that's
that.
it. And it was
But
just
again,
like,
I was at the game, but I didn't do the tackling. Like,
yeah,
at what game are you running onto the field to tackle your own son? Like, there's a lot of
yeah,
places where that I just thought it was very charming.
yeah.
Of course you were.
I
Of
really
course.
had to clarify that it wasn't me. Some could say, well, you put him in the sport. That is true. That's on me. Um, I'll pass it off on him. He really wanted it.
Yeah.
Christy,
Yeah.
take some of the blame. The point is, would I ever run out on a field and tackle somebody? Probably, if I needed to. Like, I feel like there have been times where I've been annoyed as a parent watching your child and seeing a player play dirty, or having issues with a coach or whatever it may be, where I've been like, I just want to run out there and have a go myself. Because I've watched enough practices. I think I could tackle correctly.
I don't know that this is helping.
No, I've never run
I'm
out there.
kidding.
It takes a lot to not run out there, especially when they go down, when they get hurt. But we've been very fortunate with injuries and not having to really go to the hospital, which is why that all three in the span of 6 months was a real
Yeah.
shocker for me, because
Yeah.
the youngest had never been, obviously. And then the middle one, I don't think the middle one had been either.
Wasn't that when you sent me the picture of him and he was laying in the emergency room, just like completely prone, but still wearing his winter coat?
Yep.
It was the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. Because that was the thing. You think when you take a child with a head injury to an ER that you might get bumped up the list. You don't. So we sat there for a very long time.
Yeah.
Before he got in. And then it was I think he did end up getting stitches. They were going to glue it, but then they couldn't, and then they thought it was fine. My younger son, they did glue instead of stitches, so he barely knew anything was happening, and he's up to date on tetanus and all of these kinds of things, so he was fine. For him, it was just an annoyance because he couldn't really hold the phone and play with it, so he had to like balance it on the okay part of that hand while trying to play, and he was just mostly annoyed.
Right.
But he was perfectly fine, which is why I took the judgment of like, oh, and you brought him in? I did not. I did not.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, I want to remind you, like, I'm the same. I'm also like, I take judgment because, for example, take a dog in for just a routine checkup, and then I'm getting lectured about her teeth. Well, her teeth are pretty crooked. This is going to be potentially that her bite is misaligned. And I'm like, what's the solution? She's managed to survive this long. She can eat.
Dog Invisalign?
Again, I'm like, I don't know why you're giving me a shaming tone when it's like, also genetically speaking, I didn't birth her. Like, it's not my bad genes. Like, I'm sorry. And even if I did, are you going to shame a parent for their child having a jacked grill? Like, give me a break.
How about, and this is just an idea,
Please.
how about, hey, good for you bringing the dog in at all.
Yep.
Good for you checking on, seeing how things were going. You don't have to have something negative every time. And just because
this
the
is the
dog's
thing.
not ill at this point, you don't have to be like, well, she seems fine, but that's
the thing. So to travel with her, because I've been traveling with her quite a bit back and forth to Canada, you have to get a travel certificate, which is basically like within a week of traveling, you have to take the dog to the vet to get them checked out so they can sign off. Now, here's the joke. Have my travel certificates ever been checked at any point in travel over the last decade plus I've traveled with animals? Nope, not once. It's something that's required by the airline. It's not required by either country. The countries, you just need to show that the dog or the cat has proof of rabies vaccine. That's it. But
sure.
the airlines demand them. So I'm like, well, what's my alternative? I roll the dice and then potentially get denied getting on the flight. I can't do that. So I go in, I take them in for these travel certificate appointments. And then it does turn into exactly what you're talking about, which is, well, this dog is perfectly healthy. There's nothing wrong with them. So now let me lecture you about what could go wrong. I got a lecture about Bean, who I'll remind you is like 3, spry, lot of energy. That was, I don't even, I'm going to be able to get this out without laughing. The lecture was, well, I know she looks slim now, but if you start feeding her scraps, weight can really be a problem for little dogs. And I was like, this is body shaming. Like, I can't.
Well, and also not your first dog.
Not my first dog.
And also, what did this come after? Like you feeding her scraps? Because you know what that leads to. It's like,
she
seems healthy.
Yeah.
For now.
It was literally that. And it was like, well, she's small. Oh, and then the other advice I was given was, hey, treat her like a dog. Okay? Treat her like a German Shepherd. All right? Because I know she's little. You can pick her up. All of the above. But then you're making bad habits. That's how codependency starts. Usually starts around this age. That's how the separation anxiety begins. Because you keep picking. And I'm like, she's 6 pounds. The world is very large. And if we're out on the street and she looks up at me and goes, Mama, and I'm going to pick her up.
Well, I mean, she's 6 pounds now, but once you start giving her scraps.
Yeah. Well, me and the overfeeding I'm clearly doing. I can't.
Oh,
it was, yeah. No. It literally felt like it was the equivalent of that scene. And I believe it was Billy Madison or was it Tommy Boy? Tommy Boy, I think, where it's like something like, well, he's doing this now, but then that's when the horrors come out. Like, it was like taking such a leap. Like, it was like, we're catastrophizing here in a way that it's not like this vet had seen the dog over the course of years and gone, well, I'm noticing a bit of an uptick, whatever. Like, it's the first time meeting the dog. Yeah. She's 6 pounds.
Also, sir, if I may, I am not a vet. I
Yep.
have no vet training, but the ability to carry a dog or not is not the only thing that causes separation anxiety. And I know that because I had a 75-pound dog who I absolutely did not carry around, who absolutely destroyed, shredded my bedroom carpet because I left her for an hour.
Yeah.
And she just didn't like being without me, which, bless her, what I wouldn't give for an animal now that loved me that much. Not the point. The point
Yep.
is, carry her all you like. Treat her like a German shepherd. Good
Yep.
God.
Then the next time, this is the follow-up to all of this. The next
Yeah.
time was when I got another lecture about the teeth, which was, if you don't clean them, then they'll get an infection and it goes straight to the heart and they die. And I was like, okay, sure, yes, oral health is very important. But I had just finished explaining that I'm like, I've only had her since January. I've been building her trust. We're getting there. Do we do it all the time? No. Do we do it as much as we should? Probably not. I'm trying to build the trust so that I can do it long term. I've just got her comfortable with me clipping her nails, and she's got no problem now. How did I do it? Very
Trust.
slowly over the course of months and months. So then that way, now when I have to handle her paws, no problem. But if I had just jammed myself in there, right? Like it literally, like I'd spend a day just running the nail clipper over her paws. That was what we did for like 2 weeks.
Hey,
No clipping, just getting her used to the touch of it. I
look
care.
at you. Yes.
I'm saying? I'm like,
Look
the
at us.
next thing is just running the running the toothbrush on the outside of the mouth. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like,
Course.
come on.
I couldn't be happier of the two of us sitting here trying to justify how much we love our children and
Yeah.
that we swear we're good parents, no
There.
matter what professionals have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, she got diarrhea the other day and I had to take her in. That was a whole other story. And then they were like, well, what has she been eating? And then I had to admit that she did have a little bit of my ice cream cone, but it was McDonald's vanilla soft serve. And that's a treat. She doesn't get it every day. She gets it like once a month, if that.
And that's how he got it in his head about the
It's
scraps.
Yes, I know, you're right.
Oh,
Oh, but wait, no, it was a different vet. This was a third vet. It's too many vets. Too many
That's a
cooks in the
lot.
kitchen. You know what I'm saying?
That's a lot. And the attitude's not necessary.
No, no.
I don't care for that.
Anyway, she's fine now. Everything's great. She we did have this diarrhea situation, but it turns out, nothing. And they have a term for that. I can't remember what they called it, but it's like dietary misadventure or something. I can't remember what he called it, but it was like, yeah, when there's just no explanation and they have it and then it just kind of resolves and there was nothing and they didn't get into anything or eat anything.
I can't tell you how much I would like to. Oh God, I think I want the name of my biography to be Dietary Misadventure.
It's certainly our lifestyle.
Yeah. I would like a dietary misadventure.
You know what I bought?
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
These marshmallows
Yeah.
that have milk chocolate in the center.
No shit.
Yeah. So that way, now again, what campfires am I going to? Doesn't matter. The point is that then when you roast it, you put it on the graham cracker.
First of all, thank you so much for I could listen to the sounds we make about fake eating forever. Oh my God.
Then it's all melty inside.
This is okay. I'm liking where this is going. Okay. So you'll love this. I always find with s'mores, the graham cracker's always so hard and thick.
Yep.
I wish I could melt the marshmallow down enough. Oh God, maybe just put it in a graham cracker crust.
Crust is
Like
a good
a
idea. You know
pie.
what I do too? I do open face.
Well, now I'm also like, what's a way I could just use golden grams?
Here's what we do.
Yeah.
Get the golden grams, okay?
Yeah.
Put them in a food processor / blender, whatever.
Yeah.
Fine powder. Then we add just a little bit of butter or whatever. We spread them in a pan. Bake them so that it hardens.
I want this cooking show, and we're going to call it Dietary Misadventure.
Dietary Misadventure. I'm writing this down.
Yeah. Oh, I like this.
Yeah. Right?
I'm also like, God, is there a way we can take that fine crust and just melt enough of the outside of the marshmallow that we can just roll the marshmallow in the dust?
See, this is what we do on the show. It's a little bit of a yes and whiteboard, no idea is a bad idea kind of situation. We're basically in the Disney Imagineering room. And yeah, that's a better idea.
Oh, I honestly could see myself like biting into it, pressing it into a bowl of that dust and going back in.
What I'm glad about is that we both share the belief that it needs to be dust thin. Like it has to be just powder.
I couldn't be happier because I think we feel like if we're making something, there has to be a step.
Yeah.
As opposed to cracker, heat, serve. We want another step. We want to go further. We want a recipe.
Yes.
We want like, let's go a certain level. First, these are what you're going to need. Second, get out a food processor. Like we want. Yeah.
What we want is a little miss adventure.
100%. That's all we ask for. That's all we ask for. I would love nothing more than for the next time we're together that it's like we go to a grocery store.
Yeah.
Two of us. We're given a time limit because I know we do best under time crunches. And we both are like, you have this cart, you have this cart. 5 minutes, we meet back here. Whatever we've grabbed, the other person has to turn around and turn that into something. It's
I like that.
Like a guy's grocery games, but dietary misadventure.
Yeah. I also love the idea that we would likely keep running into each other in the aisles because we'd be going for the same items.
Oh, 100%. Our carts would be identical.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
It also
be like, what are these M&Ms doing in here? And I'd be like, I wanted a snack.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. This also feels like it's got shades of hit Canadian program, Just Like Mom. Remember that?
I do not.
Just Like Mom was a game show where mothers and one of their children would go on. It was the 80s, potentially even the 70s. So whatever. Anyway, I watched it in reruns because I'm not that old. Anyway, so you'd go on in a pair and then the child would have to make whatever it is, cookies, etc. They'd have a whole pantry of items. And then the mothers would have to taste test each of the kids' cookies and have to determine which was their own child's.
Oh, that feels like a recipe for disaster.
Well, it is because because the full pantry also included not typical baking items. So some kids would put like ketchup in there and then people would be like, I can't believe it. Like you'd know better than that, Lauren. But what I knew at the time to be true is it was like, that was the giveaway. That's what the mother told the kid to do, thinking they'd be able to taste it. But here's what I'm going to tell you. Do you think that ultimately if you put ketchup into like cookie batter, you'd taste it? No, it would just taste sweet. It's not going to taste of ketchup.
Sure.
If you're putting it on the outside, different story. But you know what I'm saying. If you bake it in there, I don't think it worked out for these people is the point.
I get that. And look, you may say like a kid would know better than to do that. But there was a specific potato recipe that my family has done for decades. And the sauce is like a light brown color. And it's essentially like an onion soup mix and oil, and there's some other stuff in there, but it's kind of like a brown sauce. And my father at one point wanted to make this, but couldn't remember the recipe or know where the recipe card was. So his brain went, what's the sauce look like?
No.
It's brown. So then his brain went, well, what sauces are brown? Ladies and gentlemen and dear people, he put maple syrup on them because he didn't know what else to do. Because he couldn't think of a brown sauce.
I think he's better than that. Like that's...
And he was a full adult.
I wonder if his mother knew, because I think she'd be shamed. She'd be ashamed. You know what? Let me say this, much like the both of us have been trying to defend ourselves right
Yeah.
now, somewhere in the great kitchen in the sky,
You never would have done that.
our grandmother is going, this is, I was better than that. I didn't teach him to be like that. I taught him how to do these things.
Yeah. It was a wild, I mean, those didn't get eaten. I'll say that.
I'd go so far as to say absolutely inedible. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, listen, on that note, what you drinking over there?
I'm doing a water and a Slurpee this evening.
Wonderful. I
Yeah.
also have a water and I've been chugging Diet Cokes. I've had a bit of a like nappy kind of slothy day. And
Sure.
yeah, I just feel like I need to get some caffeine in my system. So
How
that's where
does
we're at with that.
slothy compared to raccoon day?
Very similar, more naps.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So, of course, we're discussing on today's episode, Chrisley Knows Best. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I've heard the name, I've heard of the show. I know absolutely nothing about these people, this scandal. Could not be more excited for Christy to tell us all about all of the details. But in case you're like me and you have no idea what we're talking about, here's a little bit of backstory for you now. Chrisley Knows Best was a reality show featuring real estate tycoon Todd Chrisley and his picture perfect Southern family. The show ran for 10 seasons before being canceled when Todd and his wife Julie got themselves into some legal hot water. So, what did Todd and Julie actually do? Is it possible that the real Chrisley family wasn't as picture perfect as they seemed on TV? What kind of secrets has the family tried to bury? And just how many legal issues are they connected to? Christy Oxborrow investigates.
Just want you to know I'm writing down hot water just for my own sake to remember for later.
Absolutely no need. There was no
No.
need for me to do that at all. But
Your brain read Southern and you were like, I take the note.
yep,
And I liked it.
exactly.
I
I
liked it a
do
lot.
declare. That's what
Yeah.
it felt like to me.
I
Yeah.
liked it a lot. So disclaimer, as always. This episode will contain mentions of substance abuse, suicide, domestic abuse, and sexual assault. So trigger warning for those who need it. Michael Todd Chrisley, known as Todd, was born April 6, 1969 in Westminster, South Carolina, to Jean and Elizabeth Chrisley. Elizabeth goes by Faye. I assume it's a middle name. We'll run with that. So a year after Todd was born, Jean and Faye welcomed a second son, Randy, in August 1970, followed by a third son, Derek, in June 1971. Sadly, Derek passed away just 4 months later. No cause was ever publicly stated about it. Todd's parents both worked at a textile factory where Todd got a job right after high school. When he was 19, Todd started dating 17-year-old Teresa Terry. A year later, Teresa gave birth to the couple's daughter, Lindsay, on September 17th, 1989, and the couple was married the year after that. Then on August 29th, 1991, Teresa gave birth to their son, Kyle. But Todd and Teresa's marriage became rocky, and the couple separated in 1993, although they didn't legally divorce until 1996. And the divorce was a hot mess. Teresa claimed that Todd had been both verbally and physically abusive towards her throughout their relationship. Teresa got so scared of Todd that she filed a domestic abuse complaint against him in November 1994. Teresa claimed that Todd had threatened to kill her. 3 days later, Todd allegedly tore Teresa's clothes and underwear off her body and then hit her with closed fists.
Oh, God.
Teresa filed for divorce soon after, and Todd was ordered to stay 1,000 feet away from her. Teresa described Todd as abusive, controlling, and vindictive. She said he constantly corrected her. A quote from Teresa about Todd, she said, quote, "He likes to control his environment. I had 2 small kids, but at home, everything had to be picture perfect. Your hair always had to be fixed, and you had to be dressed to the nines." Also in 1994, Teresa filed a criminal complaint against Todd, accusing him of unlawful abduction of their daughter. Teresa claimed while she had Kyle in her care, she went to pick Lindsay up from Todd's parents' house, but they wouldn't let Teresa take her. Teresa said they refused to let her see Lindsay for about 2 months. Todd denies the domestic violence accusations. Todd and Teresa eventually agreed to joint physical and legal custody of their children. Then in 2000, Todd wanted to move to Atlanta, where he planned to start flipping houses. And Teresa lived in South Carolina at the time. Um, so it meant a custody battle. A judge ordered the kids would live with Todd during the week and go to school in Atlanta. And then Teresa would get the kids 3 weekends a month, plus on vacations and public holidays every even year, which doesn't sound
That's an
fair
odd.
to me.
Well, that's interesting.
Teresa claims she got the kids far less than what was agreed upon. She said, quote, Todd has a way of getting what he wants. Todd sued Teresa for $1 million in back child support in 2012. I don't know details about it other than that, except for Todd lost the case. In early 1995, while the divorce was ongoing, Todd met Julie Hughes, an employee at a local bank. Todd later said, quote, I thought she has got the most beautiful smile I've ever seen. Julie Hughes was born January 9th, 1973 in Winchester, South Carolina. Her father, Harvey, was a mechanic, and her mother, Pamela, was a bank teller. In 1978, Julie's younger brother, Harvey, known as Trey, was diagnosed with a heart murmur as an infant. After doctors saved Trey's life, Harvey Sr. became a deeply religious man, and in 1983, he was ordained as a Baptist minister. In 1991, Julie married her high school sweetheart, Kenneth Childress. Julie was 18 at the time. Kenneth was 25. They say high school sweetheart. I don't know if they even went to high school at the same time. I just
No.
assume that means whoever you were dating in high school. I choose not to think about it.
Yeah.
I do not know how long they were together before the wedding took place, but the marriage only lasted a few years. Some believe Julie was still married when she met Todd Chrisley. Kenneth's sister claims that Kenneth once found a note on Julie's car that had Todd's phone number on it. This apparently led to a fight, which allegedly led to their divorce. Kenneth Childress, I'm really butchering that last name, I'm so sorry, died in November 2012 following complications from heart surgery. He was 46. So months after Julie met Todd, she became pregnant. And 1 month after Todd's divorce was finalized, Todd and Julie were married on May 25th, 1996. And exactly 1 week later, on June 1st, Julie gave birth to their son, Chase. They welcomed daughter Savannah on August 11th, 1997. And on May 16th, 2006, they welcomed their third child, Grayson. At some point in the 90s, Todd moved on from the textile factory, started flipping houses for a living. In 2002, he created a real estate management company called Chrisley Asset Management and moved his family to Roswell, a wealthy suburb in Atlanta. Life wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, though, for the Chrisley family. Sadly, Julie's brother Trey took his own life in 2002 at the age of 25. Julie spoke with Tyler Henry about it on a 2017 episode of Hollywood Medium. And in 2012, Julie was diagnosed with breast cancer. But after a double mastectomy, she went into remission and, as of now, seems to have a clean bill of health. The positive side of 2012 was the birth of the first Chrisley grandchild, Chloe, who was born to Todd's oldest son, Kyle, and his girlfriend, Angela Johnson. Unfortunately, there was a lot of drama surrounding Chloe as her parents weren't able to properly care for her at the time. Kyle had struggles with substance abuse and mental health issues, which we will get into more later. In 2014, Chloe was placed in Todd and Julie's care. However, Angela continued to claim Chloe as a dependent in order to obtain food stamps and Medicaid. She was arrested in April 2016 for Medicaid fraud. Her case has since been resolved and the charges were expunged from her record in December 2017. Todd and Julie received full custody of Chloe in 2016. So, as Todd is building this empire, he thought his family would make for good television. So, they put together a sizzle reel and pitched it to 10 different networks. Of the 10, apparently 9 of them made offers, and in March 2014, Chrisley Knows Best premiered on the USA Network. Todd said, quote, "I always knew there was some crazy, but they felt like it was a show, and so I thought, wow, the world really does have a desire for crazy." According to IMDb, the show follows Atlanta-based self-made multimillionaire Todd Chrisley, his devoted wife Julie, and their 5 children, who live a seemingly picture-perfect Southern life with everything money can buy. It was an instant hit. The show averaged about 1.8 million viewers. Audiences loved the sass and the big personalities on the show. It continued for 10 seasons, concluding in March 2023. Now, full disclosure, I did not personally watch this show when it originally aired. I watched 2 random episodes for the sake of research. And look, I'm not a reality show person. If you love them, I love that for you. It's just never been my jam. And is it fair for me to judge the show as a whole based on 2 episodes? No. But I barely have time to fold my own laundry, so I certainly don't have time to watch 205 episodes. Plus, this episode isn't about the TV show, it's about the people on the TV show. So that's how I'm justifying my actions. I know I don't have to justify my actions. It's a reflex from my childhood. We'll get into that another time. But based on those 2 episodes, the show seemed to follow the format of like the family does something very benign. Todd finds it wildly irritating. Then we see the family having fun, and Todd comes in and just shits on their joy. Then Julie tells Todd to get his head out of his ass, and for the last few minutes of the show, it's a big family love fest. I'm sure people can say the same for most reality shows. It just felt so incredibly forced and fake to me. I get they have to create drama or else the show wouldn't be worth watching. But in one episode, it was Christmas, and Todd's mother, known as Nanny Faye, showed up supposedly unexpectedly with her sister. And then Chase brought 2 friends with him, and Todd acted like the world was ending. He kept complaining that he had no space for all these people. And let me point out, at the time, they were living in a 5,200 square foot home. There's a scene in that episode. Todd needed a bathroom, and then he complained when there were 2 that were in use. And what was I going to do? The bathroom, or the house, had 6 bathrooms. Use one of the other fucking bathrooms, man. Again, I know they need to create drama for the sake of the show. I was just irritated the more I watched. And audiences say that Todd's sass is the highlight of the show. But to me, God, he just really came across as a dick. Again, reality shows aren't meant for me. If you're a fan of Chrisley's show, don't let me take that from you. Keep loving what you love. The show definitely wasn't for me. Like the episode in season 4, when Chase, who was 19 at the time, decided he wanted a tattoo. So he got a Bible verse, or specifically John 3:16, tattooed on his ribs.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, and who shall ever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life.
Wow. I knew there was a reason I didn't have to write that down. Look at you. So he gets this tattoo. Todd is livid. Todd then starts offering Chase things. What's it going to take for you to get that off your body? He offered to buy Chase a Range Rover if got the tattoo, or if Chase got the tattoo removed. And then he allegedly tricked Chase into going to a dermatologist to get the tattoo removed. Like, it was a whole thing, and I was very annoyed. But Todd filmed the appointment and giggled every time that Chase would make a sound like he was in pain. And then he made the sounds of his son being in pain the ringtone on his phone. And I get it. It's TV. Todd's playing it up for the cameras. But in the moment, it felt really psychotic and made me think about how Todd's ex-wife, Teresa, accused Todd of being incredibly controlling. Like the time Todd wanted to teach Chase a lesson about keeping secrets. So he threw Chase's laptop into the pool. And maybe people think I'm being too hard on Todd. He just rubs me the wrong way. For example, during an interview, Todd was asked how his son was liking college. And Todd said, and I quote, "Chase is trying to screw his way through the entire campus. He's a typical teenage boy that I have to pray over daily." Maybe not the best way to describe your son publicly. While filming
Nope.
the 4th season of the show, the Chrisleys moved to Nashville in 2016. They bought the 5,200 square foot house that I mentioned earlier for $1.6 million. It featured 4 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, and then 3 years later, they bought a second house about 20 minutes away for $3.4 million. The new house had like 6 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms, 13,000 square feet, but apparently the plan for the new house was to flip it and put it back on the market 2 months later. However, there were no takers, and the house was taken off the market in May 2020, which is shocking that no one was looking to buy a massive mansion during a global pandemic. But
Yeah.
in 2015, Todd started developing a talk show for the USA Network. In September 2017, the show, according to Chrisley, debuted. It featured Todd tackling the truth about marriage, parenting, sex, and relationships. It featured a celebrity guest as well as a second member of the Chrisley family on each episode. The show was canceled after 1 season due to poor ratings. And maybe, I don't know, maybe audiences found it tough to take parenting advice from a man who, at the time, had not 1, but 2 children who were estranged from him. Lindsay, Todd's oldest child, was briefly on Chrisley Knows Best, but left in 2017 after a falling out with her father. It turns out that Todd wanted to use Lindsay's divorce as a plot line for the show. Lindsay wasn't interested. Lindsay eloped with Will Campbell in 2012 when she was 5 months pregnant. The couple welcomed a son, Jackson, in 2013. So Todd did what any loving parent would do. You tell your kid, "I want to put your divorce on the show." They say, "No, thanks." So then Todd publicly accused Lindsay of cheating on her husband with an official from the Georgia Department of Revenue, who at the time were investigating the Chrisley family.
Oh my God.
Soon after, Lindsay filed a police report accusing Todd and Chase of harassment. Lindsay claimed Chase bought a sex tape that allegedly featured Lindsay, and Todd and Chase threatened to release the tape if Lindsay didn't, quote, lie about a specific incident. What incident? No one has ever said. But Todd gave an interview denying the accusation of this tape, and then took it a step further and said that Lindsay had more affairs because he wasn't done. Todd said, and I quote, "It's heartbreaking and shameful that these kind of accusations have to be aired in public. We've tried to keep Lindsay's extramarital relationships with Robbie Hayes and Josh Murray private for her sake since August 2016. For those of you not well versed in reality TV, Robbie Hayes was on the 12th season of The Bachelorette. Josh Murray was on the 10th. The sex tape allegedly showed Lindsay and Robbie Hayes. In September 2021, Lindsay said she had no interest in reaching out to her father, stating, quote, "There will never be reconciliation. I think that most that anyone can ask for at this point is everyone to go on with their lives as they see fit and to just leave the other side alone." And then there's Todd's oldest son, Kyle. Throughout Kyle's struggle with sobriety, he has had a tumultuous relationship with Todd. We will get into more of it later, but in 2014, when Todd was given custody of Kyle's daughter, Chloe, Kyle publicly accused Todd of stealing Chloe to help boost the show's ratings. Kyle said in an interview, quote, "My dad showed no interest in Chloe at all until the show and until it was pointed out that having a mixed race child and getting her and all that would be good for his demographic."
Ooh.
Yeah. Julie has been very public to say that she considers Chloe to be her daughter, not her granddaughter. So she feels Kyle should treat Chloe like he's her brother, which is okay. In 2017, Kyle was no longer speaking to the Chrisley family at all, claiming he had moved on with his life. He even claimed that Todd often bragged to him about not paying taxes, which will be relevant in a moment. However, in 2019, Kyle took the statement back and said that he lied. So, what else did Todd have going on besides his real estate company and Chrisley Knows Best? Well, in October 2018, Todd created Chrisley Productions, Inc., which was used to produce DeMarcus Family Rules in 2020. Don't know what that show is? Well, it follows a member of the country music trio Rascal Flatts and his beauty queen wife, Allison Alderson. And for those of you who, like a young Christy Oxborrow, had a country music phase in the late 90s and early 2000s and are familiar with the music of Rascal Flatts, you're probably wondering, what member of the group is that show circled around? Not the lead singer. And not the one who I always believed looked like a grown-up version of Taryn Noah Smith from Home Improvement. The reality show focused on the third guy, Jay DeMarcus. And please know, I am not meaning to be rude, but if you ask me to picture the guys from Rascal Flatts, only those two faces come to mind. So I was just surprised it was the third guy who got the TV show. And to be clear, back during my country phase, I loved Rascal Flatts. I could fully burst out into a rendition of What Hurts the Most or Praying for Daylight. I'm going to spare you all and not do that. But as a fun fact, what was the ultimate song for young Christy Oxborrow during said country phase? This Kiss by Faith Hill. If it comes on the radio, I become another person entirely. Anyhow, DeMarcus Family Rules was canceled after one season, and Chrisley Productions was dissolved in February 2021. Todd and Julie became ambassadors at Nutrisystem in January 2022. Other Chrisley-related projects included What's Cooking with Julie Chrisley, which was a 10-episode web series launched on the USA Network website in October 2017. They also had a podcast called Chrisley Confessions, hosted by Todd and Julie. It streamed on iHeartRadio in August 2018 and was said to feature Todd and Julie chatting about faith, family, food, and, well, just about everything. Stop. In April 2019, the spinoff Growing Up Chrisley premiered on the E! Network. The show followed Chase and Savannah as they moved from Nashville to Los Angeles to try to make lives of their own. It lasted 4 seasons, but was canceled in November 2022, along with Chrisley Knows Best. Also scrapped in 2022 was the show Love Limo, which was basically supposed to be some sort of speed dating show hosted by Todd. The idea was first greenlit in May, but then got pulled 6 months later. And why were all these Chrisley related projects canceled? Because Todd and Julie were indicted on charges of tax evasion. Todd denied any wrongdoing and pinned the entire thing on a former business partner named Mark Braddock. In an Instagram post, Todd stated, quote, "I'm telling you all this now because we have nothing to hide and have done nothing to be ashamed of. Not only do we know we've done nothing wrong, we've got a ton of hard evidence and a bunch of corroborating witnesses that proves it." Is there actually any evidence that proves they were innocent? We'll find out right after this break.
Well, I love that deeply organic transition. You heard the lady. Go get another drink, hit the can, and we're going to be back with more on the Chrisley Knows Best episode of True Crime and Cocktails. Clap 2 on 3. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing Chrisley Knows Best. Before the break, Christy seamlessly teased that we're about to get into the lies, the scandal, and so much more.
So, what have we learned about Todd Chrisley so far? Well, we've learned he made questionable choices on the show, probably for the sake of ratings, and he might have had some sort of problem when it came to control. But fans are drawn to the show because of Todd's sense of humor and his sassy comebacks. However, according to show insiders, Todd uses a team of comedy writers to write dialogue for him for the show. Someone said, quote, "Todd does not come up with this stuff on his own and is not as funny as people think." According to inside sources from the show, quote, "It is hard for anyone who works with Todd or Julie to believe their marriage is authentic.
Wowzer.
It's made for TV. They do not display the same level of affection and love towards each other off camera as they do while they are filming." Of course, I don't know these people, so I don't know how accurate this insider source is. But there has been a lot of questions about Todd's sexuality. A lot of people have suggested that he might be gay, as he is, what one stereotypically would have considered to be a gay man. Basically, like us in the 90s, when everyone was like, "Oh, he's so clean cut and he dresses well." And wait a minute. Yeah, because the 90s were a different time. But when Todd gets asked about the rumors, this is what Todd had to say. This is a quote. "I'm flattered that people can think I can get laid on both ends. So that doesn't bother me. And my wife certainly is flattered that as many men want her husband as there are women. With that being said, I'm never going to have a drought." It wasn't no.
Yeah.
But I just, as soon as I read it, I was like, God, his PR team must really cringe when he does any sort of interview. People suggesting that you're gay does not equal there's a line of all genders waiting out the door for you. That's not what that means.
Well, and what's interesting too is that I also just want to go on record as saying, like, it's truly nobody's business, and he shouldn't be forced to feel like he has to address it unless he wants to address it and what that means. But with that in mind, I feel like also, we live in a time now where things are on such a different spectrum. And like you were saying, the 90s was very unfortunately black and white in a negative way.
Yes.
Now it's like, we obviously know that people can be of a million different genders and sexualities. Things are fluid. Things are, it's not one of two choices.
Yes.
But what I find interesting is just that he felt he needed to address it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, if you don't want to talk about your sexuality, that's your prerogative. But then you're addressing it, but then you're not answering it, which makes it feel like you're probably trying to be provocative by not fully answering it.
Sure.
Anyway, yeah. I just offer that again because, again, he doesn't owe anybody anything about his own personal sexuality, and
absolutely,
that's their business. But then he chose to address it, but then chose not to address it. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He absolutely was trying to divert from the rumors with a joke, but his joke didn't land. Because I guess maybe someone didn't write it for him. But
hey, oh,
that's what she does. But straight or not, it's not our business.
Yep.
But Todd and Julie have always put forward a single unified front. They gush about how much they love each other on like birthday posts on social media. In a post in 2020, Todd referred to Julie as the only woman he's ever loved, which kind of feels gross knowing that he was married before her, especially since he had 2 children with his first wife.
Yeah.
But speaking of the only woman Todd ever loved, a few times on the show, Julie bragged about being crowned Miss Carolina in her youth. She was not. In fact, there wasn't even a Miss Carolina pageant. Nothing specifically Miss Carolina when Julie was a teenager. And to be clear, she was also not the winner of any Miss South Carolina title, teen or otherwise. Not even Miss North Carolina. No Carolinas. It's possible she's competed in one of those, but she was not crowned. From the best I could tell, she never won any of them. Miss South Carolina Teen USA started in 1983, since which time 2 winners have gone on to become Miss Teen USA. The most recent one was Catherine Lee Graham in 2014. Her mother, Jennifer, was a winner in 1985. But the first South Carolina Miss Teen USA was Vanessa Manillo in 1998. Vanessa is currently married to 98 Degrees heartthrob Nick Lachey, who you may recall from another reality show, Newlyweds, Nick and Jessica. I hope Nick is far nicer to Vanessa than he ever was to Jessica. I can say that because Newlyweds is one of the few reality shows that I've actually ever seen.
And why is that?
That's because I hang out with you. Anyhow, it was a pleasure watch. Yes. Fun fact, the year that Vanessa won Miss Teen USA, she also won Miss Congeniality.
Hey.
So, what is something that we have not learned about Todd Chrisley yet? How about the fact that despite being portrayed on TV as a self-made multimillionaire, it turns out that Todd is terrible with money. In August 2012, Todd had 4.2 million in assets, but nearly 50 million in debt, which led to him filing for bankruptcy.
Oh my God.
During the filing, Todd claimed he only had $55 in his bank account and $100 cash.
Oh my God.
Todd's lawyer at the time blamed the severe debt on poor real estate investments.
Oh boy.
Maybe, just maybe, The debt had something to do with the family's extravagant lifestyle. Like how, when living in Atlanta, Todd flew to Los Angeles twice a month to get his hair bleached.
No.
And while he was there, he'd stay at the Beverly Hills Hotel.
Here we go.
It seems excessive to me, but what do I know? On an early episode of Chrisley Knows Best, Todd bragged, quote, "In a year, we sometimes spend $300,000 or more just on clothing." Which is interesting because according to his bankruptcy filing, Todd claimed his clothing was only worth about $650.
Oh, here we go.
When Todd filed for bankruptcy, Jason Petit, who was appointed a trustee for the case. So Jason's job was to determine what assets of Todd's could be seized to pay back the creditors. So Jason filed a motion to have Todd's couture wardrobe seized, all because of the comment he made on the show about how much money they spend on their wardrobe. So Todd agreed that they could take the clothing to pay back the creditors, but only once it was looked at by an appraiser that they both agreed on. But then after that, Todd would just buy the clothes back for however much the appraiser said they were worth.
That
To-
doesn't
yeah.
make any sense.
Oh, I know. Todd said if the appraiser valued the clothing at more than 650, well, Todd would just pay whatever the appraisal value was. In the end, Todd got to keep the clothing because it was stated that there was no market for used men's clothing. But I find it wild he owed millions of dollars, claimed to be fully broke, but said if they took his couture clothes, he'd just buy it back for them, no problem.
Yeah.
With what money, Todd? With what money? Jason Petit also claimed that between 2004 and 2011, Todd didn't file any state income taxes in the state of Georgia.
Ugh.
You know, Georgia, the very state where Todd was living at the time, where his wife lived, where his kids attended school, and where his business was located. However, you're like, wait, how would this possibly have gone unnoticed for years? Probably because during those years, Todd claimed he was a resident of Florida on
Oh.
his federal tax returns. And I know what you're
Wow.
thinking. Why Florida? Probably because Florida is one of the 9 states that doesn't require its residents to pay state income taxes. The other 8 include South Dakota, Texas, Washington, Wyoming, Alaska, Nevada, New Hampshire, and Tennessee, where the Chrisleys moved in 2016, although I'm not sure. I'm sure the move wasn't connected to that in any way. So how did Todd get into that much debt? Well, there was a real estate development loan that Todd got, but the real estate investment he made failed. So he was suddenly on the hook for $30 million, which of course he didn't have. And despite being in massive debt, Todd continued to spend like the debt didn't exist. There were designer clothes, luxury vehicles, travel, real estate, all of that. But there was an earlier loan that I want to focus on briefly. In October 2006, Todd, acting under the Chrisley Family Trust, received a $10 million loan from Integrity Bank in Atlanta, Georgia. The loan was a line of credit for real estate investments. At the time, Todd was on a list of preferred individual borrowers at the bank, which was a small list of people who were given loans that exceeded loan policy and Georgia statutory lending limits. It's interesting that Todd made that list at all when the property Todd used as collateral to secure the loan had $8 million in liens on it. So how on earth was he approved for a loan like that? I wonder if it has anything to do with the fact that his mother-in-law, Pamela Hughes, was vice president of operations at the very bank at the time.
Here we go.
In January 2011, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC, sued the bank's board of directors for gross negligence for approving the loan, claiming the board did inadequate analysis and verification of Todd's financial background before approving the sizable loan. Documents from the FDIC said the state and federal regulators repeatedly warned the bank of the increasing risk associated with their oversight in lending, and somehow that oversight led to more than $70 million in losses.
Wow.
Yeah. Needless to say, Pamela doesn't work for that bank anymore.
Yeah.
But, you know. Oh, and that 10 million that was supposed to be all for real estate. They bought cars, trips, clothing, all that sort of thing with it. But of the 10 million, Todd has only paid back about 6,500.
Wow.
He also defaulted on a $300,000 loan in April 2014 that caused his mother's house to go into foreclosure. But
Wow.
Todd wasn't the only Chrisley with debt. His wife, Julie, owned a company called Jubilee Investments. Julie, after a failed land sale contract, the company owed about $13,000. But after court costs and legal fees, the amount increased to nearly $21,000. Creditors tried to collect on the debt 9 separate times, but Julie refused to pay. They tried to garnish Julie's bank account, but a judge wouldn't allow it. However, the judge did allow the police the authority to go to the Chrisley house and take whatever personal property from Julie would satisfy that debt. Once Julie heard that they were allowed to come in, she just immediately wrote a check for the full amount and gave it to her creditors in February 2016.
Wow.
And in August 2019, Todd and Julie were indicted on 12 counts of conspiracy to commit bank fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and tax evasion. Their accountant, Peter Tarantino, was also indicted on tax-related charges. It was believed that the Chrisleys had evaded over $2 million in taxes. Todd and Julie denied any wrongdoing, but agreed to surrender themselves. October 2019, the Georgia Department of Revenue cleared the Chrisley family of the tax evasion charge. They even claimed the Chrisleys had overpaid in 4 of the previous questionable tax years and said they owed less than $77,000 for 1 year. That year was likely 2009, when the Chrisleys owed $214,000 and agreed to a settlement where they would pay $150,000, but then they only really ever paid half and then just kind of let it go. Todd said, quote, "Julie and I knew all along that we had done nothing wrong and that when the facts all came out, we would be fine. We're just glad that the Department of Revenue was willing to keep an open mind and look at all the evidence." But remember, tax evasion was just one of the 12 charges in that indictment. When it came to bank fraud and wire fraud, Todd still said they were innocent, but this time he claimed his former business partner, Mark Braddock, had created phony documents and forged their signatures to steal money from the Chrisleys. Todd also claimed that Mark threatened other employees with violence if they ever came forward, but without any proof of this, it meant that Todd and Julie Chrisley were headed to court. And after several delays due to COVID-19, the trial started in May 2022. According to U.S. Attorney Ryan Buchanan, Todd and Julie, along with the help of their former business partner, Mark Braddock, submitted false bank statements, personal financial statements, and audit reports to various banks in Georgia to obtain more than $36 million in personal loans. The money was then spent on travel, designer clothing, real estate, and luxury vehicles. Once the money was gone, Todd then filed for bankruptcy, which allowed him to walk away with more than $20 million from those loans that he didn't have to repay. When it was first discovered that the Chrisleys were under investigation by the FBI for tax evasion, the Chrisleys blamed their daughter Lindsay. You may recall Lindsay and Kyle were Todd's kids from his first marriage. After Todd married Julie, Teresa spent, or Lindsay spent more time with Julie than her own mother, Teresa, and that eventually led to Lindsay asking Julie to adopt her when she turned 18. So things were all positive between the family members when Chrisley Knows Best first started in 2014, but soon Lindsay was estranged from the family, after Todd publicly accused Lindsay of cheating on her husband with two dudes from The Bachelorette. Well, during this time, Kyle publicly stated that Lindsay and his mother, Teresa, were the ones who ratted Todd and Julie out to the FBI for fraud. However, it wasn't Lindsay, and it wasn't Teresa. The FBI source was Todd's former business partner, Mark Braddock, the very man who Todd claimed created fake financial documents and stole money from them in 2012. Mark went to the FBI and fully admitted to committing bank fraud, but said he only did so at Todd's request. Mark also claimed that he and Todd had a year-long affair.
Interesting.
The Chrisleys denied the affair, as well as the idea that they were complicit in the document forging. They described Mark as an obsessed former employee who became vengeful after being fired from the company. Mark testified during the trial in exchange for immunity. He said his children went to the same school as Todd's children, and they first met at a school function in the early 2000s. When they moved into the same neighborhood 2 years later, Todd and Mark became friends, which led to a secret year-long affair. After the affair, Mark went to work for Todd's company, Executive Asset Management, which managed and sold foreclosed properties. Mark claimed he helped grow the company from 2 employees to 60, and when Executive Asset Management was sold in 2005, Mark went to work for another one of Todd's companies. Mark testified that between 2007 and 2012, he used Microsoft Word to create false documents to make the Chrisleys seem richer than they were, and that he only did so because Todd had asked. Mark said, quote, "I was complicit in giving him what he needed. We had a personal relationship of an intimate nature. I would do whatever he needed to get done." Mark was fired in 2012 after Todd claimed that Mark had stolen from him. After he was let go, Mark went to the FBI and admitted to the financial crimes that he had committed on the Chrisleys' behalf. Prosecutor Ryan Buchanan claimed that Todd and Julie submitted these false bank statements and financial statements to various banks so they could get millions of dollars worth of loans. He also claimed Todd submitted fabricated bank statements and credit reports to a California property owner in July 2014 because Todd was trying to rent a house from this owner. Some of the fake documents had been physically cut and glued together. Unless you're faxing that in, I don't know how you're pulling that off if you're physically cutting and pasting.
Yeah.
Nailing it in. But even though the Georgia Department of Revenue cleared the Chrisleys of tax evasion, it was claimed in court that the Chrisleys did not file tax returns or pay any taxes from 2013 to 2016. It was also claimed that Todd and Julie's accountant, Peter Tarantino, filed 2 false corporate tax returns on behalf of Todd's company. claiming the company made no money in either of those years. To avoid having to pay $500,000 in unpaid taxes that were owed by Todd, they opened a company called 7 Seas Productions, and they put the company's corporate bank accounts in Julie's name. Because Julie was fine, but it was Todd that had the tax problem. And the day after the IRS asked for information about those accounts, so the moment that they knew that they were being looked at, Julie transferred ownership of the company corporate accounts to Todd's mother, Faye. During the trial, Faye was asked about the transfer. She said she honestly just signed anything that Todd put in front of her without reading it. The prosecution told Faye that she was listed as the president, member of the board, and main shareholder of 7 Seas Production. Faye said, quote, "I have never owned it. I don't want it." Faye said she had given Todd and Julie access to her own personal bank account years ago when they were going through a hard time, and she let them do whatever they wanted with it. There was also a Bentley that was financed under Faye's name. The financing application claimed that Faye owned 75% of 7 Seas Productions. Faye claimed to not know anything about the vehicle or the shares. Faye also, during the trial, at one point called one of the lawyers honey, which I was actually kind of charmed by. I assume it was like her Southern roots coming out. And while I may have been charmed, the judge was not. The judge had to outright tell her, "Don't do that again." And I'll tell you, if I was on the stand, I would have gone, "Ooh, oh, tough crowd," which is why I should never be part of any sort of serious court case ever. So on June 7th, 2022, after a 3-week trial, Todd, Julie, and their accountant, Peter, were all found guilty. Todd was convicted of conspiracy to commit bank fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, bank fraud, and tax fraud. In November 2022, Todd was sentenced to 12 years in prison, to be followed by 3 years of supervised release. Julie was convicted of the same charges, as well as a charge of wire fraud and obstruction of justice. She was sentenced to 7 years, followed by 3 years supervised release. Todd and Julie were also ordered to pay restitution, the amount of which is to be determined at a later date. Peter Tarantino, the accountant, was found guilty of multiple tax-related violations and sentenced to 3 years in prison, followed by 3 years supervised release. At the time of their sentencing, Todd was 54, Julie was 49, and Peter was 60. Something I find interesting about Todd's age here. According to the official government documents, Todd is listed as 54 years old as of November 2022. But according to everywhere else on the internet, Todd was born in April 1969. But being 54 in November 2022 means he was born in 1968. Maybe the government paper made an error. Maybe single person on the internet made an error and everyone has just copied them. But on a birthday post in April 2021, Julie mentioned Todd, and in a hashtag, it was like something about him turning 53, which again means he was born in 1968, not 1969. So I don't know where his birth year is actually correct. It's either 1968 or 1969. Does this matter? It was a single year. No, it doesn't matter. I just can't stand when things don't line up, and it drives me crazy, and I feel gaslit, if I'm being honest.
I get that.
I feel gaslit by the internet. There we go. So, according to U.S. Attorney Ryan Buchanan, quote, "Over the course of a decade, the defendants defrauded banks out of tens of millions of dollars while evading payment of their federal income taxes. Their lengthy sentences reflect the magnitude of their criminal scheme and should serve as a warning to others tempted to exploit our nation's community banking system for unlawful personal gain. After the trial, Todd and Julie were remanded to house arrest until their sentencing, which took place 5 months later. They also had to tell their probation officer anytime they spent over $1,000. At the sentencing, Todd made a plea for leniency for his wife, Julie, so that she could raise their granddaughter, Chloe. Julie then requested that instead of prison, she could just remain on house arrest until Chloe was an adult. Chloe was 10 at the time. However, both Todd's and Julie's pleas were denied. The Chrisleys' 25-year-old daughter, Savannah, was made legal guardian of her 10-year-old niece, Chloe, and her 16-year-old brother, Grayson. On January 17th, 2023, Todd reported to a prison in Pensacola, Florida, while Julie went to one in Lexington, Kentucky. Peter Tarantino reported to a prison in Alabama on May 1st, 2023. Chrisley Knows Best, which had been renewed for a 10th season right before the trial in May 2022, was canceled in November after the sentencing. The last episode aired in March. This was the same time the spinoff show Growing Up Chrisley was also canceled. However, it won't be the last time we see the Chrisleys on the small screen, because as of the time that this airs, just last week, on August 14th, 2023, it was announced that the Chrisley family would be returning to TV. No title has yet been given, but it will feature Chase, Savannah, Grayson, Chloe, and Nanny Faye. The chief creative officer of Scout Productions said that collaborating with the Chrisley family, who are nothing short of reality royalty, for their much anticipated return to TV is beyond thrilling. And to that I say, is their return much anticipated? They've barely been gone. Barely.
Yeah.
My hangy ball in the back of my throat has dried out completely for reasons I'll never know. I feel fine. Not the point. Point is, so I also like that they're like, you know what? We need a show. We're just going to have to do it without Todd and Julie. Done. Are they going to zoom in from prison? I don't even know. I won't watch it.
No.
But again, if you like the show, I like that for you. Love it. Love what you want. Don't let me take your joy.
Of course.
So, Todd's oldest daughter, Lindsay, who had been estranged from the family for years, posted to Instagram in May 2022, quote, "We love you, we stand by you, trust you, believe you, and are praying for you. I know you were innocent. I pray the system does not fail our family and the jury sees the truth. To those who've haunted our family for years, I pray you will be seen and we will be heard." After the sentencing, Lindsay said she was heartbroken. So I guess when she said no reconciliation ever, she meant maybe some later, because it seems like she's now back in their corner. The Chrisleys' second daughter, Savannah, posted, quote, "This life is so cruel and we're all doing the best we can. I continue to stand by my family and fight for justice for ourselves and for others that the system has failed." She then added that she felt let down by God and that she felt her relentless prayers had gone unheard, but she said she would continue to believe and fight. The fight is far from over. The Chrisley children have been very vocal about the inhumane prison conditions their parents are living in. They have said they will appeal. and they believe it will all work out in the end. So, was the tax evasion and the trial the only legal drama connected to this family? Of course not. We're an hour and a half in. So, no, absolutely not. So, in August 2019, their son Chase was accused of avoiding payment of his 2014 income tax. He was given a federal tax lien of nearly $17,000, which he was forced to pay 2 months later. Then there's Todd's oldest son, Kyle, from his first marriage. Kyle struggled with substance abuse and mental health issues. During the first season of Chrisley Knows Best, Todd explained Kyle's sudden absence from the show, saying that after discovering that Kyle was into drugs, Todd sent Kyle to Africa to do some volunteer work. Did he really go to Africa, or was it a lie to protect from the fact that Kyle might have been in rehab? I don't know. Kyle claims he was in and out of rehab about 40 times.
Oh,
It was
wow.
it was later said that Kyle was removed from the show because he refused to take his medication and he was hostile to the cast and crew. In July 2013, Kyle was hospitalized after a police report claimed that Kyle threatened to kill his father during a drug binge. He was later diagnosed as bipolar. In October 2014, Kyle talked about being removed from the show, saying, quote, "This show has been nothing but bad for me. At this point, he's messed up me and the other 3 kids who are spoiled. The whole thing is fake. He micromanages everything. So if you say something he doesn't like, he'll say stop. He'll then tell you what to say, and you'll have to do it again." Then things got worse between Kyle and Todd when Todd was given custody of Kyle's daughter, Chloe. Kyle publicly accused Todd of stealing his daughter and referred to him as a toxic snake. He said that his father, as I mentioned earlier, he said his dad had no interest in Chloe until he was told that could be a real boost on the show to have this child on the show.
Oof.
Todd responded with a tweet saying, quote, "My son Kyle is bipolar. He suffers from mental illness. He will struggle for life." Then in September 2016, Todd decided to remove Chloe from Chrisley Knows Best because there was a legal battle with Kyle at the time. If Chloe was on the show, it meant that Kyle would be paid. When asked about it, Todd said, quote, "At the end of the day, we have to do what is best for Chloe. We did not want to drag her through all of this, and there was no way we were going to pay Kyle a penny." By adding that, it just feels like it was more about the money and spite than it was
Yeah.
about the well-being. But what do I know? So Chloe appeared on the show during the first 3 seasons, but then she returned in season 6 after Todd and Julie were granted full custody. In April 2014, Kyle married his girlfriend, Alexis Wilby. A year later, Alexis, also known as Lexi, allegedly threatened to expose Todd as a racist to the media if Todd didn't pay her $20,000. Todd then publicly tweeted, quote, "Alexis, stop being silly, you fame-seeking whore. You can't count high enough to reach me." He then added a second tweet, and again, these are Todd's words, not mine. Quote, "Bye, you tired ass, weave wearing, ashy skinned hoe."
Oh my God.
The tweets have since been deleted, but
Yeah.
thanks to the beauty of the internet, they live forever.
Yep.
So Kyle had publicly accused his sister Lindsay and their mother Teresa of ratting Todd and Julie out for tax fraud. I mentioned that earlier in the episode. What it turns out that in 2017, Kyle and then wife Alexis both gave statements to the Georgia Department of Revenue in which Kyle told them about Todd's alleged offshore accounts. Alexis also told them that Todd had a warehouse in Georgia full of luxury furniture, and when the warehouse was searched, investigators found boxes of forged documents. So yeah, it wasn't fucking Lindsay. Anyhow, also in 2017, Kyle gave an interview with Good Morning America where he claimed that Todd would brag about never paying his taxes. In 2019, Kyle had a sudden change of heart and decided to get back on Todd's side. He claimed he lied in previous interviews, and then he threw Lindsay and Teresa under the bus and claimed they were responsible for turning Todd in. I assume just to cover his own ass, but Kyle said, quote, "I was battling drug addiction and I felt like he was trying to control me. So when they said, if he's locked up, he can't put you back in treatment, I said, okay, I should have said no." But Kyle had his own problems. Around the time of this reconciliation, he was charged with felony possession of methamphetamine when police officers discovered drugs in his car when he was pulled over for a broken taillight in Oklahoma. Police also discovered at the time there was an outstanding warrant for Kyle in Georgia because he had allegedly made death threats against his wife, Alexis. I guess she was ex-wife technically at the time because they were divorced in 2018, I believe. Kyle allegedly texted Alexis in January 2019, quote, "Not before I end you. I'm going to the street. I will get my shit and take care of this problem with you, because if I'm not with you, nobody will be. Bye, Alexis." Alexis responded, "That's a threat to my life." Kyle responded, quote, "Yes, Lexi, it was. Goodbye." Since the death threat charges were more serious than the drug charges got dropped, which I didn't realize was a thing. And then in May 2023, the death threat charges got dropped because Alexis stopped cooperating with prosecutors. But the death threat charge wasn't Kyle's first run-in with domestic violence. According to Chloe's mother, Angela Johnson, Kyle grabbed Angela and choked her when she was pregnant. She also said, quote, "There was a time when he got mad at me and came at me with a knife while I was holding Chloe. He was talking about stabbing me, then threw a bottle of pills and hit me and Chloe right in the face with them." Angela said Kyle was never interested in Chloe and he only really wanted the money. Kyle denies this and said that Angela was the one who wanted the money. Everyone around this family is just claiming everyone's all about the money. There was also a brief time in February 2013 when Kyle was wanted by police after an altercation with Angela's sister. Word on the street is that Kyle threatened Angela's sister with a knife. And a time in late 2012 when Kyle's sister Lindsay accused Kyle of punching her in the face. According to a police report, Lindsay did have swelling above her left eye when the officers arrived. Kyle was arrested for simple battery, but after agreeing to take a domestic violence class, his charge was lowered to a misdemeanor. At the time of his arrest in 2019, Kyle was described as a loose cannon who had burned all his bridges. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that just months later, in August 2019, Kyle and Todd suddenly reconciled. Kyle claimed he lied during past interviews and then put all the blame about the Chrisley tax investigation on Lindsay. A month after the reconciliation, Kyle was admitted to a hospital after attempting to take his own life. Kyle said suicidal tendencies were a side effect of the medication that he was taking at the time. Since then, Kyle started dating Ashley Nelson. They got engaged in February 2021 and were married a month later. Continuing on with other crimes connected to the Chrisleys, but this time a Chrisley family member was the victim. I guess Lindsay technically was a victim in the earlier one, but you get where I was going.
Yeah.
In early 2021, a stalker started harassing Savannah, who was just 23 at the time. According to the Chrisleys, the stalker got Savannah's phone number off the dark web and then hacked the social media of various family members. The family even got Savannah 24-hour security because of it. The name of the stalker has not been publicly released, but the Chrisleys describe him as a drug addict with a long arrest record. And then, just last week, again, August 14th, Lindsay Chrisley filed for a protective order against a man who had been harassing her since October 2022. The harasser has not been publicly named, but it turns out that Lindsay was also having problems with an ex-boyfriend named Thomas Malura. Lindsay and her husband, Will Campbell, finalized their divorce in October 2021. Then in late September the following year, Lindsay announced she was in a relationship with Thomas, but less than 3 weeks later, the relationship ended. And now, even long after it was over, Thomas allegedly keeps posting old photos of them and tagging her as though they're current photos, which is gross.
Yeah.
It's either a pathetic attempt to get her attention or, even worse, trying to get her back. And I say this with every fiber of my being. Just leave women alone.
Yep.
Leave them alone. One more Chrisley-linked crime to get into, and this time it's not Todd or his kids. Randy Chrisley was born August 1970, and he was the second son born to Jean and Faye Chrisley, Todd, of course, being the older brother. Randy had 2 children, Gabe and Amber, with a partner, and then later married his longtime girlfriend, Pamela Bryson, in 2012. The couple lived in South Carolina, where Randy worked as a real estate agent. In 2014, Randy was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. He managed to make a complete recovery. However, the illness took a toll on his marriage, and in 2016, they divorced. Pamela accused Randy of cheating and said he had an addiction to pain pills that caused him to allegedly get violent with her. Randy denies the allegations and claims the divorce happened because of Pamela harassing his family. On March 4th, 2016, Pamela was arrested and charged with extortion and second-degree harassment. She was released the same day on a $1,000 bond. Pamela was accused of threatening to sell a story to the National Enquirer that would hurt the Chrisley family. Pamela asked for money in exchange for her silence. According to Todd and Randy's mother, Faye, Pamela allegedly demanded that Faye deposit money into Pamela's account or, quote, she was going to destroy my family. Pamela also allegedly sent Faye text messages claiming she was going to, quote, bash her brains in if she caught her in town. There has been no word as to whether these charges have stuck. If they have, no trial or sentencing has occurred. And apparently 2016 was a big year for Randy and Pamela, because on October 30th, 2016, 2016 was the year they got divorced, but on October 30th that year, Randy was arrested for shoplifting $22 worth of candy from a Dollar General in South Carolina. The store manager caught Randy in the act and called the police. Randy said he shoved the candy down his pants simply because he just didn't have room to carry it all.
Oh, that's what normal people do. Sure.
I want to point out he was also pushing a cart or a buggy at the time, but the bags of candy were shoved down into a pair of sweatpants, which were layered underneath a pair of wind pants. Allegedly, the sweatpants were taped around his legs so that the candy wouldn't fall all the way down. So he basically made large inner pockets of layers.
It's ridiculous.
It absolutely is. Randy said he had the money to pay for it all, and he doesn't know why he took the candy. Well, if his pants were layered and taped in that very specific way, then he absolutely went in that store with the plan to steal. He also left his 11-year-old son in the car while he shoplifted, so he had to call someone to pick the kid up once he was arrested. He was released the same day. Nothing has been stated publicly about Randy's arrest since, so it's possible the charges have been dropped. But fun fact, Randy's ex-wife Pamela used to work at the very store that Randy allegedly stole from. Now, while the Chrisley family may be surrounded by controversy, they are the only reality show stars with legal drama. Here Comes Honey Boo Boo was canceled after Mama June was seen out with Mark Anthony McDaniel, a fucking creep who had just been released from prison after serving 10 years for molesting an 8-year-old girl. The worst part is, it turns out the victim was Mama June's daughter, Anna. But that wasn't the end of reality shows for Mama. She somehow ended up with her own show, Mama June From Not to Hot, and also appeared on a season of The Masked Singer. Then there's Paula's Home Cooking. Was canceled by the Food Network in 2013 after celebrity chef Paula Deen got accused of being inappropriate in the workplace and racist as hell. Not only did Paula admit to using the N-word, allegedly, during a wedding, Paula asked the African American servers to, quote, behave as if they were in the Civil War era. There was also a moment when Paula Deen's son, whose name's escaping me, there were photos of him in blackface, I believe, at one point.
Of course.
And speaking of racism, the Dance Moms spinoff, Dance Moms Abby's Virtual Dance-Off, starring Abby Lee Miller, was canceled before it even started after Abby was accused of making racist comments about a former contestant. And in 2017, Abby pleaded guilty to 20 counts of fraud after failing to report earnings of more than $750,000. She was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison and given 2 years of probation after release. She was also ordered to pay $160,000 restitution. Oh, Lord. Then we got a big one. John and Kate Goslin of John and Kate Plus 8 fame are no strangers to legal troubles. The couple, who were married in 1999, had a set of twins in 2000 and a set of sextuplets in 2004. Then they went through a very messy divorce in 2009, during which Kate claimed that John had taken $180,000 out of their joint account, leaving Kate with just over $1,300. A judge ordered John to return the money, but Kate claimed he returned less than $30,000. Then it was discovered that Kate had taken $55,000 from the account herself. She claimed it was for family expenses. She was, of course, ordered to return the money. Over the years, there have been 16 different legal issues from the Goslins. I won't get into them all because, honestly, most were just bullshit money-seeking lawsuits. But in 2009, when John quit the show and refused to film anything, TLC sued him for $5 million for breach of contract. John then countersued and accused TLC of breaking Pennsylvania child labor laws. That was thrown out and determined not to be a thing, but John settled with TLC out of court and he had to pay them $200,000. In 2011, a marriage counselor was brought out to Los Angeles to meet with the Goslins at Kate's request. But the counselor never got paid. So she had to sue Kate. And then Kate was like, I don't know this woman. I've never met her. I don't know. The judge sided with the counselor and Kate ended up having to pay her. And in 2018, Kate sued John over unpaid child support. And just kind of went back and forth. Prior to filming their show, John worked for a company that made machines to process credit card payments. However, John was secretly working for a competitor and using the leads from this other company to sell the competitor's stuff. Jesus.
Wow.
The original employer sued John, and he was ordered to pay them $1 million. And it's not just the money issues. John's ex-girlfriend, Haley Glassman, accused John of pushing her and pinning her against a wall during an argument. He was never arrested for it. And in 3 separate police reports between 2014 and 2015, Kate accused John of being inappropriate with their daughters, kidnapping their children, and a phrase I never thought I'd say, using his DJ job as a front to deal drugs.
I mean,
if there's ever a place, there
Yeah.
was no proof of any of those accusations at any point. And then most recently, in 2023, John and Kate's son, Colin, publicly accused Kate of being abusive throughout his childhood. He even claimed Kate sent him to a psychiatric facility when Colin started telling teachers the truth about his abusive home life. Is there enough legal drama with John and Kate to potentially do a full episode about them? Yeah, probably. So moving on. Dwayne Chapman, known better as Dog the Bounty Hunter, was sentenced to 5 years in prison after being convicted of third-degree murder in 1976. Dwayne was waiting in a vehicle while his friend shot and killed a 69-year-old man during a drug deal. Dwayne was released after 18 months. Then in December 2002, predator and all-around pile of shit Andrew Luster was on trial for drugging and raping 3 women. And in case there was any doubt of his guilt, the prick videotaped the attacks. So we know he did it. During a break in the trial, Luster skipped $1 million bail and fled to Mexico, where he lived under an assumed name. In absentee, Luster was found guilty of 86 counts, including drug and weapons charges, poisoning, rape, and sodomy. He was sentenced to 124 years in prison. 5 months after his escape, Luster was discovered by Dwayne Chapman, who arrested Luster, placed him in handcuffs, and put him in the back of a van. However, that move was a violation of Mexican extradition laws, so Dwayne was arrested for kidnapping. He spent 2 weeks in a Mexican jail before jumping bail himself and returning to the United States. He faced potential extradition back to Mexico for years until 2007, when a judge finally canceled his arrest order. However, Dwayne was required to pay his lawyer for various fees over this Mexico ordeal, and he refused. In 2013, a judge ordered Dwayne to pay $880,000. As of 2021, it had not been paid. Random personal fun fact: Dwayne Chapman is now 70 years old and has been married 6 times and has 12 children. Random pop culture fun fact: in 2011, actor Nicolas Cage was arrested in New Orleans on disturbing the peace and domestic abuse charges. Dog the Bounty Hunter was the one who bailed Cage out. If you're a fan of Dog the Bounty Hunter, I would suggest not reading up about his political beliefs. They are disheartening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know I can't talk about reality show stars with legal problems without mentioning the infamous Duggar family. But there is so much about that family we would not have time to even scratch the surface today. So look for that episode in September. Yeah, that's just how it goes. And yeah, for real, I'm being serious. There will be one. Look out for that. So back to the reality show family of the day. Where are the Chrisley family members now? Elizabeth Chrisley, aka Nanny Faye, who is currently 79 years old, is undergoing treatment for bladder cancer. Her family says they are fortunate they caught the cancer early, and she seems to be physically okay. It is said, though, that she is in a dark place mentally with Todd and Julie in prison because she says her heart is broken. Lindsay Chrisley, who is now 33, currently co-hosts a podcast with Kaylin Lowry from Teen Mom 2.
Horse.
Coffee Convos debuted in November 2017, and as of this record, has 250 episodes. Lindsay's son Jackson is now 11 years old. Kyle Chrisley, who is now 32 years old, was arrested in Tennessee in March 2023 on felony aggravated assault. According to the report, Kyle got into an altercation with his supervisor at work, and Kyle allegedly pulled a knife. Kyle was released on $3,000 bail and is currently awaiting trial. Chase Chrisley, who is now 27 years old, launched a candle company called Chase Chrisley Collection in November 2020. According to the company's website, candles have always been a passion of Chase's. He said he believes the scent of a candle can control the entire mood of a room. In October 2022, Chase became engaged to his girlfriend, Emmy Metters. I've also heard he has high hopes of being an actor. Savannah Chrisley, who is now 26 years old, released a clothing line on the Home Shopping Network in 2016. She launched a beauty line called Sassy by Savannah Chrisley in late 2020. And in October 2022, Savannah started a podcast called Unlocked with Savannah Chrisley. As of this record, her podcast has 42 episodes. Savannah continues to act as the legal guardian for 17-year-old Grayson and 11-year-old Chloe. Grayson seems like he's maybe looking into becoming an actor. Apparently, he made a cameo in Sharknado 4, The Fourth Awakens. The movie was released in 2016 and starred Tara Reid, Ian Ziering, Gary Busey, and David Hasselhoff. That same year, Chloe's biological mother, Angela, lost custody of Chloe after admitting to Medicaid fraud. While Chloe had been living with the Chrisleys, Angela had continued to claim Chloe as a dependent to get Medicaid benefits. After the Chrisleys' sentencing in November 2022, Angela said she was talking to a lawyer about options of getting her daughter back. However, Angela terminated her parental rights in front of a judge in March 2017, so getting Chloe back is probably not legally an option at this point. Todd claimed that at the time he offered to buy Angela a car and a condo and pay for her tuition to attend nursing school, but he said she wasted all of it, which almost sounds like he said he paid her to step out of that child's life, allegedly. But after gaining custody of Chloe in 2014, Todd and Julie went through the process of legally adopting her in 2016. So it is most likely that Chloe will remain with Savannah. As of August 2023, Todd and Julie Chrisley remain in prison. Todd is scheduled to be released in 2035 when he is 65. It's possible he could get out early. Federal law requires him to serve a minimum of 85% of his sentence, which would give him an early release of about April 2033. Julie is scheduled to be released in 2030 when she is 57. Will Todd and Julie get an early release? Will this episode lead to more episodes about reality shows with legal problems? The answer to both is, well, only time will tell. But once we have an answer, we'll be sure to mention it here on True Crime and Cocktails. I'm Christy Oxborrow. Good night.
Wow. I like that we went for some 6 o'clock news situation there. That is nice.
I felt like I just sometimes there's an easy, like I say a thing and rattle it off and away I go. This time there was no nice way of saying something and then reporting for. So I was like, I have to do this in a different way. Treat it like the news.
Well, here's the honest truth. It is the news.
Hey.
On that note, let's take one more drink, hit the can one more time, grab another drink, and we're going to be back to wrap it up on this Chrisley Knows Best episode of True Crime and Cocktails. Right, final clap on 3. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing Chrisley Knows Best. We're going back to the beginning. First note in my notes, dietary misadventure cooking show. So just know it's in there.
I like that.
What I loved is you said Elizabeth, but she goes by Faye. And I wrote down, fun fact, Tina Fey, her birth name was Elizabeth.
Hey. Oh, I like that.
So there you go. Fun fact. Okay, this custody deal with Teresa and Todd, I can't let it go. I don't understand it.
Mhm.
I've never heard of that. A judge suggesting that. And look, I don't know the ins and outs of family court either, but I just
Sure.
feel like, okay, you can move the kids to another state where they'll go to school, and then some weekends they'll go back to this other state to see their mother. That just feels highly irregular. You know
Well,
what I
and
mean?
Also, okay, he can have them 5 days a week. You only get them 3 out of the 4 weekends a month, but you can have them on vacation and holidays, but every other year.
Yeah.
So it's like, so he's getting them like on the other years, he's getting them so much of the time.
Yeah. Again, it feels like a really biased deal.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, did he claim he made more money than he did? And the judge was like, oh, the kids should go there.
It's more than possible. Well, he's comfortable with lying, so you never know.
Yeah.
Brother Harvey, known as Trey. One of the things I love is when it's not like it's like his given name was Robert, but he went by Bobby. What I love
Sure.
is when it's like her name was Patricia, but she went by Ray Ray. Like it's like when it doesn't connect at all. Like his name was Cecil, but he went by Thomas. Like it's like, where are these connections? And I know normally it's probably middle name, but it always tickles me whenever I hear it in general in life.
In the case of Trey, it was absolutely not middle name because
Wonderful.
It was like Harvey Cecil Hunter Hughes or something like that. I could be wrong. I'm assuming, because I assume he was a junior, I assume he was possibly the third. And that's how he became Trey? Maybe. It might be a leap, but it's the best I got. Because, yeah, I mean, Patricia and Ray Ray. I think I'm just going to start referring to Ray Ray, by the way.
Look, again, I love it. I when there's no connection, it makes me very happy.
Yeah.
He came up with a TV pitch. 9 out of the 10 networks they pitched said yes. Bull butter. Bullshit. No way. I don't buy that for a second.
Thank you for bull butter.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. That's my stepdad talking there. Yeah, no. I don't. Here's what I'll say. Show me the proof. Show me the proof. First of all, 10 networks wanted to meet with this nobody. That's bizarre. Second of all, who are all these networks? Third of all, look, I'm not saying that he didn't get the show made. He did. And kudos. That's virtually impossible to do. It is like winning a lottery on a lottery. It's very difficult to succeed at that. And I do have great respect for that. But I don't buy that at all. That sounds like bravado, which is something that feels like is common for this character.
100%.
When you talked about a 5,200 square foot house being 1.6 million, I know that some people were like probably listening and going, ooh, that's expensive. But 5,200 square feet, wowzer, compared to the LA prices or Toronto prices, any big city prices, that's a deal.
Okay.
Good
Yeah.
deal.
Oh, the 5,200 square feet blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like, that is a lot of space.
I mean, there's places that are there's condos in big cities that are 650 square feet going for 1.2 million. Like,
Oh,
it's
I just saw
wild.
I just saw a video a girl posted of like, here's my apartment in New York, and she walked in and it was like literally a closet.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, where's the rest of it? Like I was like, what? And I can't even imagine what she spends
Oh yeah.
on rent. So
Oh, it's wild.
yeah, smaller
Um,
cities probably for me.
yeah, well, yeah, listen, again, my kingdom for 5,200 square feet. Uh, Lindsay being bullied by her father and brother, these made up affair stories. That is wild to me. Really does speak to his character, Todd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That the first thing he
Um,
did was say, oh yeah, well, she slept around. It's like about your own
your
daughter.
child. It's so gross. And then again, this, implication that perhaps adopting Chloe into the family could have been for a show storyline, make them look good, etc. That's just so disgusting. I can't. If that's true, it's obviously in alleging. Um, you were talking about your country phase, to which I wrote down, I never had a country phase or a rap phase or a hip hop phase. Hashtag pop punk princess for life.
Mm-hmm.
Psychopath.
Nope.
You talked about Love Limo, and that made me think of the ill-fated reality show called Next, where there would be a bus. If there was, for example, it was heteronormative. Again, this is the 90s. I'm not justifying it. It just was what it was at that time. So say there was a female, though they may have done same-sex couples in some episodes. There would be a bus of 4 gentlemen, and they would walk out, and at any point, the girl in this scenario could say next, and then that person gets
Back on the bus.
kicked off, and then they bring out the next one. But the player, the guy, for every minute he lasted, would get $1 or whatever it was. So the idea was you had to try and stay on for as long as possible. Some
Mhm.
people would just walk out, they'd get buzzed. Next, person would call for someone else. Other times they'd make it for, 30 minutes or whatever it was, then they'd get buzzed. Like it's a terrible premise, and I ate it up. Teenage me loved it.
I bet it sounds very no likey, no lighty.
It is very no likey.
How many
Yeah.
girls buzzed the second the guy came down?
Yep. And vice versa.
Yeah, were
Right.
there a lot? I think it was mostly all. I thought it was all women, wasn't it? Am I
I thought they
confused?
flipped it.
Did they?
No, no, I don't think they did. I might be. That's not the point.
You'll love this. I also don't remember the actual name of that show.
Take me out. Turn
I
me
think that
off.
was
Turn me on.
no. I think Take Me Out was right.
I think it was Take Me Out.
Patty McGinnis.
Yep.
Hey yo.
Well, she likey, she lighty.
She does. Yeah.
Anytime, and I mean anytime in life.
Yeah.
For the last 30 years, if I hear the words New Hampshire, what I hear is New Hampshire, which is Bill Murray in hit major motion picture What About Bob? In the scene where he's trying to find out where his new therapist is vacationing. And so he does an elaborate ruse as a detective saying, there's been a murder. I need to know, like, I need to get to them. And they're like, here's the address, blah, 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 blah. Lake Pecatawny or something like that. New Hampshire. New Hampshire? This is what it's like to live in my brain.
I like it.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that he only paid back $6,500 out of 10 million. That's sickening. Just in general.
Yeah.
Oh God, him blaming his son's bipolar on the internet. Just not really committed to speaking kindly of his children or trying to dismiss them using their medical diagnoses. Don't care for that.
Nope.
The pants system that Randy had to shoplift. That's a premeditated crime, sir.
Yes.
Premeditated crime. So many things here in this list of other reality show scandals. I might also add, I believe Dog did also have an N-word scandal.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Just to make sure we include that. But then I also wanted to say, regardless of him, regardless of his politics, hashtag RIP Beth, his wife Beth, that of course
Sure.
passed. Now I used to watch this show pre me realizing what pre the N-word, first of all, but also pre me understanding that perhaps this person, I didn't think about their politics or anything like that. I just was watching the show of him hunting the bad guys, him and Beth in their outfits. What a romp. What a romp. Let's
Oh,
just say,
if you think I never watched the show, but if you think that I don't hear Dog the Bounty Hunter and think of that fucking trivia game we played a decade or more ago, where I was right there. I was about to win, and my question was about the reality show filmed in Hawaii, and I didn't know the answer, and the answer was Dog the Bounty Hunter, and I fucking lost. I was so livid because I was right there. I was right there. I don't remember what game we were playing. I don't remember so much of it. But every single time Dog the Bounty Hunter comes up, I'm like, I know it was a reality show based in Hawaii. Like every time.
yeah,
This day.
you'll never forget it now.
No, it's
Yeah.
there. It's in there.
Yeah, also important to remember, and I'm glad you did, that he did do prison time for third-degree murder. Just another, but I guess that was always part of the story that was compelling, was that he was, this ex-convict who then turned his life around and wanted to,
Sure.
kind of get into law enforcement. Now, again, I do think now we can't watch it now through this lens because again, we know how problematic it all is. But let's
Yeah.
just say pre all of that. I would have thought that you might have had an interest in that show because there's a lot of guns strapped to a lot of thighs.
That is where my interest lies.
Yeah.
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 I don't know why. I'd like to dig into that to find out where that started.
Sure.
I'm just curious as to what was the first one I saw that I went, oh, didn't know you could do that.
That's a great question. Well, for some reason, I feel like it might be connected to either Grease 2 or Mannequin, because these are the two movies you watched the most as a child that feel like they defined your sexuality. I think we should go
Yeah.
back through those with a fine-tooth comb and just see if there's any security guards or anything like that.
There absolutely is in Mannequin, and I'll be horrified if it's him because I don't remember the gentleman's name. But he was also well known from the Police Academy movies. And I'm so hoping it has nothing to do with him. And then I'm like, what kind of cop shows did I watch as a kid? The answer is Cats and Dogs. So I doubt that was it.
Was that with the Belushi?
With the Belushi. Oh no, that was K9 in the 90s. He did the
Thank
movie
you very
K9.
much. And
So
may I
basically,
also
yes.
add a valid question?
Oh yeah, it was basically
There
the
was
same thing.
so many
Both
of
a
those.
German Shepherd.
I was gonna say so many of those cop dog movies. May I also add into the conversation Turner and Hooch?
Of
Now I know
course.
that was that was a Rottweiler, different kind of dog, but man, that was a real steady genre during that time.
Oh yeah. And I'm fairly certain. I think around that time is when around K9 anyway, I think is when the Airbuds started.
Oh, sure.
And I don't need to tell you, my youngest, obsessed. He loves the Airbud ones because he loves sports movies.
Right.
And there's not enough kid-friendly sports movies.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of them. There's
I
not enough.
also would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to a little film called Beethoven, which of course we all remember, but do we all forget that there was a small role played by none other than David Duchovny? And I want you to know, I used to fast forward and just watch that scene because I had a 2 VCR setup.
Of course you did.
And so I would record little clips. I would edit essentially using these 2 VCRs from one tape to another. And that was on one of my tapes, just his scene from that movie.
This absolutely checks out.
But listen, I was riveted by this episode. Again, I didn't know anything about this, truly, truly at all. And wow, what a wild ride with a group of colorful characters.
Yeah. Yeah. I had heard very little about it, but I had seen them all over the place for the last like 2 years.
Yeah.
And so this was me learning a lot of things about them, and a lot of it I didn't like.
Yeah.
But to each their own.
To each their own. Well, listen, Christy Oxborrow, amazing work as always. No stuff stone unturned. Thank you so much for getting us all up to speed on this scandal.
I couldn't be happier. And good night.
And before we say goodnight, dear listeners, thank you for being here on this journey. If you haven't already, give us a follow on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails, on Twitter at Not Detectives. And if you'd like some more content, some more of this impossibly charming banter, go over to patreon.com/True Crime and Cocktails, where you can look into our subscription-based service over there. It's a whole lot of fun. And of course, the only place for official True Crime and Cocktails merch is truecrewmerch.com. So check that out as well if you're interested. I also want to give myself a shout out. I'm going to be coming to Chicago, Illinois. Chicago, Illinois, the end of September, September 23rd. I'm going to be playing at Loud Pizza Record Store. I'm playing an acoustic set, doing a meet and greet. So trying to get the word out. Yeah. If you're in Chicago, in the area, come say hello. Come say hello. It'd be a delight and an honor to meet you. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
On the next True Crime and Cocktails, Lake Bodom.
Lake Bodom murders. I don't know anything. It's okay. Is Lake the first name? Is it a place? We're going to find out on the next episode of this show. So make sure you tune in again for that. Christy, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Good night, Airbud.
Oh, good night, David Duchovny, circa Beethoven.